Welcome, new and old friends. My name is 242, and today, 2 got us 4 true scary stories. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. I watch you from the dark. Always. The moment you ignore your gut feeling and decide it's safe is when I introduce myself. Almost Abducted by Anonymous. This happened to my father-in-law, we'll call him Brad, in the early 50s in Louisiana. I think he was 12 or 13. Due to poor time management and early morning chores, Brad said he frequently missed the bus and had to walk or hitch a ride. Which, of course, you didn't really hear bad hitchhiker stories back then. I think his mother frequently scolded him about it, but I don't think she really believed anything bad would ever happen. He said one morning, as usual, he was running late and missed his bus and started walking. About a mile or 2 down the road, a pleasant-looking gentleman in a sedan offered him a ride, saying he was going the same direction and would drop him off at the corner of the street where his school was located. They chatted a bit during the ride. Nothing seemed off. As they neared the street of the school, Brad said, "Here it is, coming right up." He said you could see the school from the corner where he was to be dropped. Said the gentleman drove on past. Brad, thinking the man was simply not paying attention, said, "You missed it. It's right back there. You need to turn around." The gentleman said nothing and kept driving, in fact, picking up speed. This was the moment Brad realized he was in trouble. He shouted, "You need to take me back now!" Pedoman kept driving a little faster, staring ahead and saying nothing. Brad started yelling louder. Pedoman said nothing, kept driving even faster. But thank God they got stopped by a traffic light. Pedoman didn't even fully stop, but Brad opened his car door, jumped and fell, rolled, got up, and ran like hell. Pedoman kept driving. Later at home, Brad told his mom the story. But let's just say, I know this is one of every mother's worst nightmares, because even many years later, at the age of 90, she would still mention that story. She even wrote about it in a memory book for Brad's 60th birthday. Pryor, you idiot! The lead surgeon screamed at me on my first day. Jeez, fine, alright. I cowered while administering the painkiller about halfway through the liver transplant. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. The Time a Creepy Neighbor Tried to Stab Me by Funfetti Dragon. This happened in 2008 when I was 9 years old. I lived in a townhouse community where each road had 2 sides of homes. In between the back of these houses, there was a back road with an alleyway that went in between each building section. I lived on the edge of one of these, and my townhome was on one of these alleyways. I lived on one street, and across the back road on the opposite side lived an elderly woman whose name I don't even know. I'm not sure what her situation was, but for whatever reason, she never liked me specifically. She was creepy and spray painted all of her windows so no one could see in our house. However, that never stopped her from sometimes staring out of her bedroom window directly at mine, and keeping it open at night to shine a red strobe light into my room across the way. She used to yell how she hated us. I was in the 4th grade, and on a particular January morning, I had unfortunately missed the bus. My dad sent me outside to get in the car so he could drive me, and he said he'd follow me soon after. As I walked to my dad's car, she came out the alleyway next to my house, slowly, with a gigantic kitchen knife behind her back. She raised it and started running after me. I was faster than her, so I was able to avoid her and was able to get into the house. She walked and stood on the neighbor's porch across the way and stared at my house. I was terrified. My dad ran out and yelled at her, and she said she wanted to get rid of us stupid kids. My parents called the police, but the police sent her home and had an ambulance pick her up later. My parents went to some kind of court meeting about it, but I don't really know the details. I didn't see her again after that until 1 year later. I don't remember the day, but it had snowed that morning, so I was going to run out of the front door and play in the snow. I opened the door to see her standing on the porch, but looking out towards the road. I panicked, closed, and locked the door. I ran up to my parents' room and told them what happened, and we saw her walk off the porch, up the street. I never saw her again after that. My family has since moved far away from there, but people I know say she still lives there and her windows are still same spray-painted windows. Though it doesn't affect me as much as it used to. I still don't like being around knives.
Blink once if you would like to terminate program. We hope you remember our terms and conditions. Thank you for reading this. The termination of the program has been overwritten, as per the terms and conditions. And we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude for participating in the Sacrificial Being project. The extractors will arrive at 3:30 a.m. to collect what is due.
Terrible Encounter in the Middle of Nowhere by American Raider 76. This story happened back in the 90s to my parents during their senior year of high school. Since their group of friends already had cars, the favorite thing they loved to do was night hike around the state local mental hospital, mainly its old dairy farm. This was located on the side of a mountain surrounded by agricultural fields and an open grassland. Since the dairy farm was not close to the mental hospital and the nearest city life was located 5 miles away, at night the area was extra dark and quiet. Before the dairy farm was closed, the patients from the mental hospital would go there for work. During this time, some patients lost their lives at this location due to accidents. By the 90s, it was abandoned and left like a ghost town of its own, especially due to the rumors of it being haunted. It made the perfect place for fearful experience. So this particular night, around 2 in the morning, my dad, my mom, 4 of their female friends, and 1 male friend planned to go to the dairy farm. They took 2 cars, and when they got to the usual parking spot on the side of the mountain, they saw that there was already a group of 20 people standing around their cars. When my parents and their friends got out of the car, they noticed that the group of men all had shaved heads, were Caucasian, and in their mid-20s. As my parents walked past them, both groups ignored each other and avoided making eye contact. However, my mom turned her head to see one of the men, and as she did this, the man pulled back his jacket and showed a pistol tucked in his pants. Then he pulled back his lower lip and revealed his KKK tattoo on the bottom lip. When they were out of hearing range, my mom whispered to my dad, "That man has a gun, and he has a KKK tattoo on his lip." My dad brushed it off, thinking my mom was over-exaggerating, and said it was too dark to even notice those two things. So, with that, my parents and their friends walked through the grasslands to get to the dairy farm. The hike to get there is about a half a mile from where they parked. However, as soon as they got to the farm, they heard a gunshot coming from the direction of the cars. Fearing that something had happened to their cars, they booked it back to the parking lot. When they got back, the group of men were already gone, but as they inspected their cars, they saw all their tires were slashed and their windows were broken and smashed. My dad, who used a particular colored blanket as a seat cover, and his stereo were stolen. Now, they just stood there by their cars wondering what to do next. It's not like they could call someone for help. Nobody had a cell phone. And since they were deep in the secluded area, they could not flag someone down for a quick pickup. The nearest gas station with a payphone was 5 miles away. Both my dad and his male friend didn't want to leave the cars alone since they both drove classic cars and they feared the men would come back. Eventually it was decided amongst them that they send both males to run to the payphone was the best option, leaving the women by themselves with the cars. This was because they feared that the shaved head men were waiting down the road, expecting them to walk to the payphone. My dad and his friend ran to the gas station. As they left, my mom and her friends all gathered heavy rocks to use as some sort of protective weapons, and hid away in the bushes and behind the trees. 2 hours had passed when my mom noticed headlights coming down the road. 2 tow trucks rolled into the parking spot. An immense fear spread throughout the group until they saw out of the tow trucks came my dad, his brother, and the friend. They hooked up the cars to the tow trucks and were out of there in a matter of minutes. My dad told my mom that they were running down the dark and empty road. They kept their eyes open just in case the men were hiding with their car lights off. Luckily, they got to the gas station without a problem. The next part may be hard to believe, but is 100% true. 2 weeks had passed, and my dad managed to get his car fully repaired and drivable again. My mom and dad were driving to a local store where they parked and got out of their car. As they were walking into the store, a man was walking towards them. As he got closer, my mom realized that this was the same shaved head man who flashed the gun at her. My mom immediately told this to my dad, but just like the first time, my dad denied that this was true. Then, 2 weeks later, at the same store, my mom and dad were sitting in their car while my mom saw a car pull up next to them. As this man got out and just stood there by his car, she quickly noticed that it was the same man from before. My mom immediately told this to my dad. Again, my dad denied it, but my mom looked into his car and saw a very recognizable, colorful blanket my dad used as a seat cover. This is when my dad finally connected the dots and got out of his car to confront the man. But the man realized what was happening, jumped back into his car, and drove away. They didn't have time to get the license plate. The next week, when my dad was filling the gas into his car, a car pulled up right behind him, and lo and behold, it was the same man. My dad immediately got into the guy's face, ready to confront him, but the man's friends got out of the car, and one of them pulled a gun out. The man with the gun then told everyone to get inside the car, and that group drove away. It has been almost 30 years, and they have never seen those men ever since. To this day, my parents still wonder if all of those encounters were a coincidence or something more sinister. I had begun to suspect that my mother's memory was starting to fail. It was only as we discovered my brother's rotting corpse still sitting in his high chair that we realized how bad it had gotten. Remember to tell me what you think down below and hit that like button and make sure it feels it. Strange Happenings in the Mountains of Washington State by Alexander Robb. I was hiking the Olympic National Forest a few years ago, by myself and my 2 dogs. We were 4 days in, around 20 miles at least, as a crow flies from a known mountain road. I was camping around 7 kilometers that night, or right where the tree line starts to thin out. So when we got to the campsite, a big open meadow on top of the second mountain, it was about an hour from sunset. My big dog usually runs around within proximity of the camp as I put the tent up and make dinner. But I noticed this time was a little different. He kept staring up this steep tree-filled mountainside, tail straight up and barking. Not that bark when he sees a marmot, not the excited, "Oh yeah, you're lucky because I'd rip you all apart if my master wasn't here," high-pitched barks, but unsure, concerned barks. Now, the day before, I found a note under a rock at the last landmark, saying that there was a probable bear in the area that was harassing a party of campers a few days before. I myself had seen big cat tracks the day before as well. So, I was rightfully concerned that this may be more than just ground squirrels. I decided to go climb some of the boulders at the foot of the hill while I took my time looking at the hillside for movement, before I went to go hang my bear bag. There were only trees around to hang the bag. I didn't see/hear anything, but my dog kept quietly whining like there was something up there. So, while still concerned, I started to hike up this steep hill to hang the bag. It was so steep, I had to use the trees to balance and lean against so I didn't go tumbling down, before making another 5 to 6 steps pushing to the next tree I could lean against. Anyway, I'm slowly making it up this hill/ridge, hopping from tree to tree to keep my balance. Then I get about 100 feet up the hill, and I hear a whole lot of big movement about 50 feet in front of me. My dog immediately goes from a deep low growl to a savage, slobber flying everywhere type of barking now. My heart starts pounding out of my chest, and I start to panic. A million thoughts go racing through my head in a matter of seconds. Because if it's a bear, my dog is going to try to save me, in which he will most likely die. And I'm stuck here. If I have to get off this hillside fast, I'm almost 100% am going to trip and fall off this 12 to 15 foot cliff onto the boulders below, like hundreds of them, 5 to 20 foot boulders. So I'm feeling pretty screwed about now. Then I hear my other little dog start barking and freaking out down at my campsite, which was just out of sight. I had zipped her into my tent so she didn't wander off while I was away. So yeah, I'm absolutely panicking at this point. A few seconds after, I kind of snap back to it, and I take another few seconds to start to put my survival priorities in order, and I call my dog back to me, Loki by the way. He comes and sits against my feet as my back is against the tree, so I'm kind of pinned/stuck there for the moment. But my dog was seemingly trying to separate me from something up there, so I let him lean against me while I try to collect myself. This is when I realized I had completely forgotten I had a headlamp on. I reached up so fast to turn my lamp on, I basically punched myself in the face. I'm having some serious adrenaline drops going right now, so much so that my knees are starting to shake. I get my lamp on and I peer up the hillside. I figure I'll at least get a reflection off the eyes of whatever's up there. Peering, nothing. But I just heard something. We both did. And whatever it was, it didn't get away or sound like it had made it too far. I knew something was there, so I kind of just steadfast at this point. I needed to know what is up there, because I had to sleep here tonight. And, out in the middle of nowhere, alone? Better to face it than to wait like a sitting duck all night, is my thought process. So yeah, as I'm looking up the hill, and at one point my dog lunges forward, unpinning me. He does a fake/bluff charge up the hill about 15 feet, and I mean he's snarling and foaming at the mouth at this point. As he does this, I finally see movement. Something moving up and breaking the line of the horizon/sunset. My dog's bluff made whatever it was blow its cover. So I zeroed in. I call my dog back and silently watch. And what I make out made my heart completely drop. There was a man crouched about 70 feet directly in front of me, wearing not camo clothes, but some raggedy shirt with a hood that blended into the environment perfectly. Actually, almost like a makeshift ghillie suit, but with his face exposed. I could see his eyes, and his face was covered in dirt or something. But I knew we were staring right at each other at that moment. So I stared for what seemed like minutes. No words. I felt like I was trying to subconsciously convey that I'm going to stand my ground. I wanted him to know I saw him, but I guess I was just too shaken to speak. I was staring. My little dog back at the campsite started to bark her head off again, like she was scared. And I also had to get off this hill before total dark, or I could be seriously hurt, or risk dying trying to get back down. So basically, I started heading down the hill with my dog, who doesn't want to leave but listens. Periodically, I would stop with my back against a tree holding me up and look in the direction again. Just to make it even more clear, I saw him. And eventually, I make it down to the boulders at the bottom. By the time I had finally jumped down and hit the boulders, my little dog had stopped barking, and I could only see the top of the tent from the bottom of the boulders. I thought she was barking just to bark. Dachshund hounds do that. Or just barking back at my big dog. But when I get there, my little dog had somehow got out of the tent and was walking around the campground, with her tail sticking straight out. Still trying to hold it together, I thought, okay, maybe she'd just gotten her nose between the zipper and worked her way out. But I was positive I had zipped it so the zipper tab/opening was at the very top of the tent, out of reach. So, in a mixture of terrified, pissed off, and the feeling of needing to do something, I reached into my day bag and pulled out my .40. I fired a single shot into the air as the sun was setting, climbed into my tent without eating, and laid my gun next to me until first light. As soon as the sun came up, I was packing up my shit and leaving, heading back down the mountain. It sucks. It was all downhill back, but I still couldn't cover the ground to get back to my car in one day. It was dark by the time I made it to the last camp, about 4 miles from my vehicle. But thankfully, there were other people there. We sat around a fire they made, and I felt pretty relieved and safe. They start to tell me they were planning to head the way where I was the night before in the morning. So I tell them my story in detail. Needless to say, we were both walking back to our car in the morning. Screw all that. The thing that still creeps me out till this day though, is when I got home and started reading reviews of the same hike I was on, other people had had similar experiences like mine as well. Even a man found dead from a fall around the same boulder range 2 years ago. And a woman found murdered last year. After I told my boyfriend he was going to be a father, I nervously waited for his response. He shook his head with a smile and said, "Did you know that the most common cause of death among pregnant women is murder?" I really hope you enjoyed these tales today. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. And of course, remember to share this video/podcast with anyone who will enjoy it. It really helps a lot. And if you'd like to know more, like check out my Patreon, my merch, or, all my social links, check out the tree link down below. I also love to see a comment down below or on Twitter. But let me get you that Sunday word first. So, on to our Sunday word. Last week's word was slice, and I got 5 entries. Thank you guys. If you're on YouTube, they're on the screen right now. And if you're on the podcast, I'll have them up on Twitter. Now, let's get on to this Sunday's word, which is facility, which means a place, an amenity, or a piece of equipment provided for a particular purpose. Or an ability to do or learn anything well or easily, a natural aptitude. So, if you're on YouTube, just write me a comment down below using this word. If you're on the podcast, just @ me on Twitter using this word as well. But as always, guys, thank you for watching and listening. We're growing quite well, and I'm quite happy with how everything's going. And I wouldn't be here without you guys, so thank you so much. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.